The economics of owning a nuclear power plant. $11 billion to turn it on, and that's before it generates a single watt. Concrete walls, 12 feet thick. Containment domes piercing the skyline. Uranium fuel rods, glowing blue underwater. Control rooms that look like NASA mission control. One reactor, powering 750,000 homes. Here's what nobody tells you about nuclear power plants. They're not just expensive, they're a different category of expensive entirely. The kind of expensive that makes building a skyscraper look like a weekend DIY project. Let's start with the sticker price. The Vogtle Electric Generating Plant in Georgia, completed in 2023, cost $35 billion. That's billion with a B. For context, that's more than the GDP of 90 countries. To build 2 reactors. And it was supposed to cost $14 billion. They were off by a little. Construction took 14 years. 14 years of pouring concrete, welding steel, and burning through investor cash. The original completion date? 2016. They missed it by 7 years. But let's say you've got the money. You've somehow convinced shareholders, governments, or a very generous billionaire to fund this thing. Now comes the fun part, actually building it. First, you need land. Not just any land. Geologically stable land near a massive water source. Nuclear plants need water. Millions of gallons per day for cooling. Rivers, lakes, oceans. Take your pick. You're going to drain it like a bathtub. Then there's the concrete. A single reactor uses about 400,000 cubic yards of it. That's enough to build a sidewalk from New York to Chicago. And this isn't Home Depot concrete. This is nuclear-grade concrete, engineered to contain a literal meltdown. Every pore is inspected, every measurement verified, every weld X-rayed. One mistake could mean tearing it down and starting over. And yes, that has happened. The reactor vessel itself weighs 1,000 tons. It's forged from a single piece of steel in specialized factories. Only a handful exist worldwide. You can't just order one on Amazon Prime. Lead time? 3 to 5 years. And it arrives by barge because nothing else can move something that heavy. Inside that vessel, uranium fuel rods will eventually generate heat through nuclear fission. Controlled, continuous splitting of atoms. That heat boils water. Steam spins turbines. Turbines generate electricity. Simple, right? Except the fuel rods cost about $200 million per reactor core, and you'll replace them every 18 to 24 months. Forever. Let's talk about the people. A nuclear plant needs around 700 full-time employees to operate. Engineers, technicians, security personnel, regulatory compliance officers. These aren't minimum wage jobs. Average salary at a U.S. nuclear plant? Over $100,000 per year. Your annual labor cost alone? $70 million minimum. Then there's security, because you're not just protecting equipment, you're protecting weapons-grade material. Armed guards, surveillance systems, biometric scanners, redundant barriers. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission requires plants to defend against a design basis threat. That includes armed assaults and even aircraft impacts. Your security budget? About $20 million annually. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite all these costs, nuclear power is actually profitable once it's running. A single reactor generates about 1,000 megawatts of electricity. That's 1 billion watts, continuously, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. No sunlight needed, no wind required. Nuclear plants operate at over 90% capacity factor. Solar averages 25%. Wind? About 35%. That consistency is valuable, extremely valuable. At current U.S. electricity rates, a nuclear plant generates roughly $500 million in revenue per year. After fuel, labor, and operating costs, profit margins hover around 30 to 40%. Do the math. That's $150 to $200 million in annual profit per reactor. Sounds great, right? Except there's a catch. That $11 billion upfront cost, you need to pay it back. At $200 million profit per year, it takes 55 years to break even. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. And things go wrong. Unexpected shutdowns, equipment failures, regulatory changes requiring expensive retrofits. The San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station in California shut down permanently in 2013 after a $680 million equipment failure. They never reopened. The equipment was installed less than 2 years earlier. Total loss? Over $4 billion when you factor in decommissioning costs. Oh, right, decommissioning. Let's talk about that nightmare. When a nuclear plant reaches end of life, you can't just walk away. You have to dismantle it, safely. That means removing radioactive materials, decontaminating every surface, disposing of nuclear waste. Average cost to decommission a plant? $500 million to $1 billion. And it takes 15 to 20 years. You're paying workers and contractors for 2 decades just to clean up. Plant operators are required to set aside funds during operation for eventual decommissioning. It's not optional. That money sits in a trust fund, growing slowly, waiting for the inevitable. Then there's the waste, the elephant in the room, the thing nobody wants to talk about at parties. Spent nuclear fuel remains dangerously radioactive for thousands of years. Not decades, millennia. The U.S. generates about 2,000 tons of spent fuel annually from its 93 operating reactors. Where does it go? Nowhere. It sits on site in cooling pools and dry cask storage. The planned permanent repository at Yucca Mountain, Nevada, canceled after $15 billion spent on development. So every plant becomes its own mini nuclear waste storage facility, indefinitely. Storage costs? About $10 million per year per plant. Forever. Despite all this, companies still build them. Governments still fund them. Why? Because the alternatives have their own problems. Coal plants emit carbon dioxide. Natural gas prices fluctuate wildly. Solar and wind are intermittent. Nuclear provides baseload power, stable, predictable, carbon-free electricity at massive scale. France generates 70% of its electricity from nuclear. They have some of the cheapest power in Europe. Their approach? Standardized designs, streamlined regulation, government backing. They build the same reactor over and over. No custom designs, no reinventing the wheel each time. Result? Lower costs, faster construction, proven safety records. In the US, we do the opposite. Every plant is essentially a prototype. Different designs, different contractors, different regulatory interpretations at every site. The Westinghouse AP1000 design used at Vogtle? It was the first of its kind built in America. First of a kind means cost overruns, delays, learning curves measured in billions. China, meanwhile, built the same AP1000 design faster and cheaper. They finished 2 reactors before we finished 1. Same design, different execution, different results. Small modular reactors promise to change the economics. Smaller units, factory-built, theoretically cheaper. Instead of one massive 1,000-megawatt reactor, imagine 10 100-megawatt modules. Build them in a factory, ship them by truck, install them on site. Capital costs drop, construction times shrink, financing becomes easier. NuScale Power received the first U.S. design certification in 2020. Commercial deployment target? Late 2020s. Projected cost? $3 billion for 462 megawatts. That's about $6.5 million per megawatt. Compare that to Vogtle's $15 million per megawatt. Substantial improvement. but they haven't built one yet, not commercially. The economics remain theoretical. Here's the paradox. Nuclear is simultaneously too expensive and too cheap. Too expensive up front for most investors to stomach the risk. Too cheap in operation for anyone to want to shut them down once running. Existing plants keep getting license extensions, from 40 years to 60, now pushing for 80. Because once you've paid off that construction debt, you're printing money. $50 per megawatt-hour operating cost, selling power at $100 to $150 per megawatt-hour. Pure profit for decades. The newest reactors coming online in 2024 will likely still be generating power in 2084. Your grandchildren might get electricity from plants built today. That's the scale we're talking about. Generational infrastructure. The economics don't work on a spreadsheet. They work across lifetimes. $35 billion, 14 years, 700 employees, 60-year lifespan. The math of nuclear power doesn't fit neatly into quarterly earnings reports. Maybe that's the real problem. We're trying to measure century-long investments with decades